Unfortunately, yesterday I was not able to be at the workshop, but I know that there was some discussion around further outsourcing, and there was an article in the paper which has kind of risen to a concern between communications between employees. And so I wanted to kind of get clarification from the board kind of at this pivotal point. Is your direction to me, what I've outlined, is that we will continue to find and look at the types of things that I've outlined here, or do you want to, and I'll be pretty clear about this, take more proactive exploration of outsourcing related to things like jail operations and fire and EMS?
Commissioner Doherty?
Ms. Sandrock, I think that, and we were questioned on a couple of different occasions over the last year as candidates on this particular issue, and I've always had the philosophy, even when I was on board with the county, is that, you know, we look at activities, we look at functions that might be that can be quantified, defined, put out in a bid package, and you can measure. Those the example that I keep referring to is when I first joined the organization back in 1979. We did all of our own right-of-way mowing in-house. We had a fleet of mowers breaking down all the time. It was a real pain in the neck. And but you know, we could define an RFP for something like that. It could be measured, and we could put it out on the street, and we obviously converted. And it was a task. It was an activity that made sense. So yes, as far as those types of things, I believe you're doing that. I believe on a regular basis you're looking at those types of activities that might make sense. But holistically, to look at an entire organization, you know, I don't think you can get an apples to apples comparison on a lot of those things.
Commissioner Deutsch?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I sort of recall we did this a couple of years ago, and I think after looking into it and doing the research, pretty much we felt that we had a good ship, and maybe with a little effort we could make it sail perhaps a little bit smoother. But as I recall, we spent some time looking into this. Ray, is that not so?
We did do some initial looks at both those areas.
And we felt to leave things, as I recall. I just hate to see you wasting time. You know, it's not like we don't have anything to do.
Right.
Particularly you.
Probably spent more time around the jail. Couldn't really find a model that really worked within the state. Fire has never been successfully done, as far as my knowledge. There are some other strategies around EMS. Again, feedback that I've received has been that it's often within a short period of time taken back. So, you know, that was our experience.
I sort of feel if it ain't broken, why fix it? I mean, I think we look for efficiency, we look for smooth operation, but I sort of felt we spent some time digging into this in the past and didn't really find something that worked.
But what are you specifically talking about?
I'm responding to Ray's interrogatory about where he perceives we want him to go. I thought it was pretty clear. I thought we had looked at that stuff before. That's, you know, and I just hate to see him wasting time running around in circles.
Yeah, what specifically are you talking about privatizing or not privatizing? I
think we were talking, all right, as I understood it, we were talking in general. And then I believe Commissioner Doherty responded, and he said there were some items, and he specifically talked about some where he felt that sort of worked. And basically, I was agreeing with him, and I'm not sure if we want to start looking into, once again, should we privatize the jail? Should we privatize other functions? I just think it would, frankly, be a waste of time.
Okay.
And I think
so I just want to get it. So you're on the record that you don't want to do those things.
What I'm saying is I think it would be a waste of time, and I think Mr. Sandrock very clearly said two things. He said we specifically spent some time looking into the possibility of doing the jail in the past, and when he looked at examples or models in relationship to fire and EMS, he couldn't find one where it was done and it worked. Now, maybe I misunderstood, and I'm just saying, well, you know, if it ain't broken, you know, why fix it? I think, you know, we can always look at fine-tuning some stuff, but I just don't see, I can't see wasting his time and why we would go, why we want to go there. Because I'm not convinced, if I could be absolutely convinced, hey, this can work, and here's where it's worked, and, you know, Ray can give us a whole bunch of examples, it might be something we should take a look at. Does that help?
Mr. Sandra? Is that what you're saying?
Based upon our experience a couple years ago, and I believe we've even updated that more recently, not this year, but within a year, of, you know, where are the current trends? Are there models that are working? Along with a variety of other things, other type things. We were unable to find operations that worked. I know on the jail side, I personally visited and talked to other counties that had private operations, and I believe each one of those have reversed from privatization back to being under the control of the county.
Okay, so I get the jail side of it. Because it doesn't mean that we can't explore it again to see if anything new has come around, if we can see savings. Now, it doesn't mean, honestly, I'm supposed to be meeting with the sheriff either later this week or next week to kind of go over his vision and his fiscal policy, and so I'm sure this discussion is probably a bit premature. But, and I know that the interest in the past, you know, we found that there wasn't really, there weren't the models that we were hoping for, that the cost savings came at a great price, and that eventually I'm interested in finding out that what we thought would happen did happen, that a lot of those municipalities did go away from privatization because they came in with a low bid, and then once they got the contract, you know, the scenario changed and they were really shorting things and cutting corners. That doesn't mean that, you know, it can't be something that we look at, and if we find that there is a better, somebody has invented a better mousetrap for managing a jail out there, that we can't look into it if the sheriff's amenable, you know, if he says, look, I can't do it any cheaper, you know, and we see that there's something out there that might be better for managing, that's an option or an opportunity. I'm not saying that's the direction we must go, but maybe there's an opportunity. With regard to fire and EMS, I guess my frustration is the fact that we are at a point now where, again, I'll reiterate what I said yesterday, and it made the front page of the paper, that, you know, we are at a standstill with negotiations with regard to the firefighters. And I don't believe, I know that we are negotiating in good faith. I know that we would like to end that negotiation, put that contract to bed, and move forward and start negotiating with a new contract. And I see a lot of gamesmanship. Now, if I'm wrong, I appreciate, or would appreciate, that union coming forward and ending the impasse, ratifying the contract that we've put forward to them, and moving forward. But if this standoff continues, I don't believe we're in any sort of a position to even continue to negotiate for the next round of contracts, and that in order to serve the citizens of Charlotte County responsibly and ethically and with a certain financial purpose, that we need to start to entertain other options. Commissioner Deutsch.
Sorry about that. I want to respond to both of the points that you made. I'm going to separate the two. From my understanding, and I have a little bit more experience with the jails than I do with fire and EMS, generally speaking, I hate to generalize, and you may find one or two places where it works, but generally speaking, privatization in the long run ends up costing money, because in most cases that I'm aware of and have seen, maintenance and upkeep is deferred, and the bottom line is it's going to cost us money in the long run. Very frankly, I've had several meetings with the new sheriff in the last couple of weeks. We haven't gotten into this in depth. I know that the prior sheriff his feeling, well, he wasn't excited about keeping the jail. He said, if you want us to do it, we're happy to do it. And, if you don't want us to do it, hey, that's okay with me, And I sense that may be the feeling that the present sheriff has, and he accepts this as a responsibility. I will tell you this, from what I understand in the last 72 hours, our jail facility was rated, and I believe we got the highest evaluation and rating possible. Now, that's brand new. I had an opportunity to briefly speak to the sheriff this morning.
They were inspected, not rated.
Yeah, okay. And it came out, the inspection came out, from what I understand, there were no flaws in it. Okay. Okay, as far as the fire EMS, and we did discuss this in the past, I really think we have to separate, because you talked about the operation. And I have to tell you, I haven't run into anyone in this community that has complained to me or really found fault with the operation of that department. I haven't had anyone say, gee, they did a terrible job of putting my fire out. They didn't show up in time to take care of Uncle Charlie when he had an emergency. And I think the bottom line is, and I think most of us would agree.
That's not the issue.
Well, let me finish. I think most of us would agree that we have an outstanding fire EMS department. We may be frustrated, as I am, that we have not resolved the union management contract here. I think we're all frustrated by it. I'm frustrated by the whole impasse possibility, by the legal things, the bases that we have to touch, and the way we have to do it. I just don't feel that this is the place to negotiate a union contract. And, maybe we should have both sides here. But then again, if we go back to the table, as was proposed, we were told that would be a problem too. So I think what we have to do is say, hey, do we want to work this thing out, play by the rules, see where it ends up? And, unfortunately, there's going to be unfair labor practices and, whatever. And I think that really, really frustrates, I'm sure, every one of us. But I'm not sure an aggressive effort to look into something which has never worked to the best of my knowledge is going to accomplish anything.
And I appreciate your sentiments and your comments. And for the record, I am very pleased with the response times and with the caliber of the public safety sheriff and fire EMS that we have here in Charlotte County. That is not what is at issue. What is at issue is the fact that we currently can't negotiate with them, and I'm just merely proposing an option that if we continue to have impasse and charges of unfair labor practices and back and forth, that is going to take on a life of its own. We still have to responsibly provide for the county. And I just want a contingency plan. Because if this goes on for months and months, there will be no negotiating. We will have to find another option. And I don't want to be in a position where we've waited too long and now we're kind of stuck. So I just think it's leadership and it's good government. And if they want to end this, they certainly can end this. They have very responsible union leadership. They can bring it to their membership. They can get ratification of the contract, and then we can sit down and negotiate the next round, which is for work that they've already done for the last 4 months. I mean, this is insanity.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Truitt.
may I have some time, please?
Yes, sir.
First off, I'll talk about the jail. To separate these things, there have been attempts to privatize, and there's been failures to privatize. There are certainly opportunities for us to try to reinvent the wheel, but we're not in the position of being experts at running jails. Additionally, you turn something over to somebody under contract, your only recourse is through courts. We lose control of a lot of different things, and we are still held with the liability of the public safety. We took an oath for the public health, safety, and welfare of our community, and I think we have to put that in the forefront of our discussions. I believe that there are potential savings, and I hope that we can help to find those in working with the Sheriff's Office, but I do not have an appetite for that discussion. Further, fire EMS. There are areas in the country that have privatized the EMS portion. I don't know that they've been successful or that they've failed. But in a quick research, I have not been able to find yet, and I'm not saying they don't exist, but an example or a model of privatization of a fire operation. And I'm going to even step into the volunteer side of things. Quite frankly, unless you have very specific volunteers, you're wasting money buying gear for people who aren't going to be here. And I really have a problem with that. If they want to buy their own gear and they want to volunteer, that'd be great. But look at our economy. People need to be in jobs, and that means they're going to have to work. So if we bring volunteers in, which I'm happy to have, it's going to be a very difficult process. I think we're spinning our wheels there. Back to the privatization of the fire, again, there's not a model out there. Do we want to invent something we have no experience at? I don't think so. Are there potential solutions with the firefighters and the EMS, the union? I believe they are. But if we talk very openly and honestly, they won $870,000 that they offered back to try to sit down and do something with. Okay, decisions were made. Let's not dwell on what happened. As like I said earlier, let's take a look at what we have to do, and we have to go through certain processes at this point in time. We have to let them play out. We have to file what we have to file, and they have to file what they have to file. Each party's doing what they are going to do to fight and protect for their own rights. I don't like where we are. I don't like it at all. But it is where we are. And I would really like to see us get through this process so that we can get back to the table. And I believe that there is a resolution. I believe that this board could come to a resolution for the future of the county, the future of our fire EMS, public safety units. I believe we can move forward in a positive fashion. And I don't have appetite to talk further about privatization. I'll just put it on the table.
Okay. Well, I hope your optimism is going to come to fruition.
So do I.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Commissioner Daugherty.
Yeah, and just to be, without getting into the specifics, I'm not comfortable really talking about the fire and EMS at this point. I'm not sure where that places us in the entire process. But talking in general about privatization of the public safety services, I guess, again, to clarify, Mr. Sandrock, that's basically my understanding. What you said earlier is that there hasn't been a successful model for fire. As far as corrections, I've heard stories of attempts in prisons and so forth of going to privatization. But unfortunately, it's like I was saying earlier, it's difficult to put together a contract that will define all the circumstances. And what I've heard typically happens, you get a contract for baseline level of service, and you're estimating, again, the population of the corrections institution, and guess what? You end up with a different distribution of inmates, which could increase the workload, and guess what? You've got change orders, and you've got things that weren't in the contract. So the dollars actually go up. Service is typically has gone down. It's not apples to apples, is what I'm saying. So again, Commissioner Truax says health, safety, and welfare of the general public is our prime directive. And I think it would be very, very difficult because of the inability to really measure and put together appropriate contract to privatization of the public safety services. I think would be very, very difficult. And I trust Mr. Sandrock will again, using the word navigate us down the path of whatever does provide us the most efficient and effective delivery of those services. But I'm really not interested right now unless he finds a model that I'm unaware of, going towards privatization of an entire service like that. Again, if the chief finds something or the sheriff finds some kind of a task or an activity that could be put out to the private sector to perform, I think that makes sense. Absolutely makes sense. But not the entire entity. Thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Yep. And I think my clarification today was 2 words, monitor versus, well, intense work of analysis. So we don't intend to take these off of our list of monitoring because you don't know what's going to happen in the future.
Right.
Versus, do we go into a full-blown right now intense analysis? That's all.